Hello, family. Welcome back to JFK Today, your direct link to all things politics, comedy, and culture. I am your host, Janaya Future Khan, champ yapper and frequent nuisance in the activist and comedy worlds. Let's get dialed in. Just before we jump, JFK Today is a self-funded, self-produced show. We're at Patreon at Janaya FK. I am so grateful for all the support and for you just taking the time to listen. All right, time to get into it. Our overview today, we are talking about the privatization era and Wisconsin and a whole slew of things in between. It's a loaded day. But before we get in there, some quick hits. Do you remember those CEOs getting all those mental health resources that we talked about yesterday in episode 92? Well, they're now getting a help hotline. I'm not even joking. New York State is considering creating a special hotline exclusively for CEOs to report perceived threats, right? And this is happening while United Health is literally strategically limiting access to critical treatment for kids with autism. This is it, right? And why are they doing that? To cut costs so stakeholders and CEOs can get more money. I'm like, what? Can you imagine what those phone calls are going to be? Hi, hello, is this the helpline for the business exec class only? Great. I'd like to report a crime. Autistic children are taking money out of my gilded pockets. I cannot sleep at night knowing that those autistic kids are out there just learning basic skills. It disgusts me. Please tell Kathy that this is unacceptable. Okay, thanks, bye. I just can't. I just can't. ProPublica has a great report on some of the leaked documents that actually really breaks down the fact that what I just said, right? They're strategically cutting costs to deny autistic kids critical behavioral skills, right? It makes me think of Michael Moore. He wrote on his Substack, we pay more people to deny care than to give it. 1 million doctors to give care, 1.4 million brutes in cubicles doing their best to stop doctors from giving that care. These hoes, right? And look, this is something that got me though. If you are having a bad day, if you're having a good day, no matter what kind of day that you're having, just remember, you're better than CNN, right? Okay. So last week, CNN went viral. Like they were all up in the news. And I watched pieces of this segment, right? And it had Clarissa Ward. That's they're going to send that pretty white girl to every war zone in the world. So Clarissa Ward and CNN, they helped free a prisoner from a secret facility in Syria. So I watched parts of this segment and I was like, this feels extremely corny, but moved on. But guess what? The dude who was acting, so last week, remember we talked about all these people coming out of these dungeons in Syria that we hadn't seen in years because of Assad, right? And that whole authoritarian regime. Okay, so the dude who was acting like the innocent prisoner that CNN and Clarissa Ward freed, he was actually a first lieutenant in the Syrian Air Force with a long history of war crimes. His name is Salama Mohammed Salama, and he is a full-blown and very notorious Assad regime torturer. And that is who CNN put as their main feature in this segment. What happened to fact-checking? The way... We're better. We are better than CNN. I just can't. Can you imagine just people in Syria being like, these simps? these simps. Speaking of simps, do you remember how Trump ran on an entire platform, right? On, what was it? It was anti-trans, anti-gov, anti-immigrant, and cheaper egg platform. That was the whole thing, right? Here's my favorite part about this. So yes, he was the Time person's cover of the year, whatever, yada, yada, yada. So he gets on there, and in this interview, right, because this is his face plastered on it, he was asked whether or not he would consider his presidency a failure if costs did not come down for consumers. So this is obviously pertaining to groceries as well, because that was the question leading up to it. This is his direct quote. "I don't think so. Look, they got them up. I'd like to bring them down. It's hard to bring things down once they're up," he said. It's very hard. So, yeah, your grocery prices are not going down. We're not getting grocery prices, cutbacks on groceries, but do you want to know what we are getting? Ammo vending machines. That's right. Never mind a carton of eggs when you can get a box of bullets instead. That's where we're at in America. This is going to become a norm. You can just buy bullets. We can buy bullets in vending machines in grocery stores. Now, I love where we're headed. Speaking of Trump, because I've been following this whole TikTok story, because, things are heating up over there. But Trump met up with TikTok CEO Xiao Chu at Mar-a-Lago, right? This comes they met hours after Trump suggested that he might reverse course on the impending ban on the app in the US. And this obviously is going to impact tens of thousands of people who rely on the app to make ends meet, to pay their bills. They have worked tirelessly to build up that platform or their personal platforms in order to make a living, right? So as of today, the TikTok has, officially asked the U.S. Supreme Court to intervene. They filed an emergency appeal to block the U.S. ban unless it's sold. My take is this. These guys only care about money. And I don't see a scenario where they walk away without coming to some sort of agreement where money can be made. The only way it doesn't work out is if they want a complete, they want it absolutely sold to U.S. ownership. I just feel like they're probably going to come up with some kind of thing. They're putting TikTok in the worst possible position, the owners of it, putting everybody who owns it in China on the back foot to get the best possible deal for the small subset of billionaires who will benefit from this. That's my take. We'll see how that goes. I just this whole thing pisses me off. It really pisses me off. Oh, it feels like there's just natural segues today. I don't even have to do my botched efforts because speaking of being kind of pissed off, what the fuck, Trudeau? What are you doing, dude? We're talking about some global things for a moment, okay? Because Justin Trudeau, little curls, is going to face one of the biggest tests of his political career. So get this, okay? So there's a person, Chrystia Freeland, and this person's been the finance minister of Canada for a really long time. She is one of his most powerful and loyal allies, right? She's been a dogged minister for this guy. So she resigned from cabinet today. Well, today for me. Tomorrow when you hear this, right? This is our Tuesday episodes, but she did it in the afternoon. And I'm going to just say this, right? When your most loyal lady leaves, when she's emotionally over you, it's over. It's over. So Freeland said that her decision came after Trudeau informed her last week that he no longer wanted her to be his government's top economic advisor. And so I was like, all right, let me figure out why. And it's because she held a differing opinion regarding the threats that Donald Trump has made on tariffs, right? So these economies are very closely linked. Trump has threatened Canada with a 25% hike on tariffs, and that would have major implications on the Canadian economy. So she said it was important in this moment to, quote, She believed in, quote, pushing back against America first economic nationalism. I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Like, come on, have some dignity. Have some dignity. I guess Justin Trudeau felt otherwise. So now the NDP is calling for his resignation. So are people in the Liberal Party. This is going to be an interesting next few months for sure. This guy is he has never been more unpopular politically in his 9 years as a prime minister than in this moment. I don't know how. I'm watching very closely to see what happens with this, and it's like, I'm used to reading a lot of news about like other places in the world, and political upheaval, but all of Europe, we got problems in France. Germany is joining the thing, honestly, because Canada is not the only place under duress. Like, I'm going to tell you something. All of these countries in the West are full of aggrieved white people. Some of them are racist, but most are just fucking done. They're just like, change this shit up because late stage capitalism is reaching a critical point. So, what's up with Germany? Okay, so German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has lost a vote of confidence in the German parliament. Said differently, right? This means that it kind of collapsed. This has been happening since November. We've been dealing with this, in terms, I have been watching very closely because the AfD they're like super anti-immigrant Nazi party, and I'm just making sure that they don't win. I really don't want those folks to win. Like, I'm just like, absolutely not acceptable, right? So where do we stand with this? This guy low-key wanted to lose this vote because there's been budget disputes. His coalition has been unsteady. So he knew the outcome, and the goal for him, it was like a last-ditch effort, is to trigger an election. It's just, that's rough. That's rough. And what is the number one concern over there in Germany? Economy. What's the number one concern happening in Canada? Economy. What's the number one concern in the United States? Economy. It seems like this is a pretty consistent theme. Maybe it's not working out. Sure, they're running on anti-immigrant this and transgender that. But at the end of the day, people are pissed off about the economy, and they're wondering why they are working multiple jobs sometimes and still unable to make ends meet. You can only throw around the word inflation so often before you start to realize that the actual model itself is designed for exploitation. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that I pointed out that the entire West sucks. Just in case any of you were thinking of running away from this place and leaving me alone in this ghetto-ass American circus, I refuse. Please stay in hell with me. Thank you. Okay. On a more serious note, yes, I am aware of the school shooting that happened in Madison, Wisconsin. I have done a lot of research, both on those dirty internet streets and also just from legitimate and reputable news sources to sort of get to the bottom of what happened, because there was an unbelievable amount of misinformation, right? So here's where we're at. 15-year-old girl. A 15-year-old girl was identified by police as the student who opened fire at a Christian school in Madison, Wisconsin. So the school is called Abundant Life. And the 15-year-old girl, her name is Natalie Rupnow. One student died at the scene. One teacher died at the scene. At least 6 other people were injured in the shooting, in the school shooting. And Rupnow was dead at the scene. And it, for all intents and purposes, appears from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, right? This sucks. it fucking sucks. This is 15-year-old girl. This is the 323rd shooting at elementary or secondary schools this year as of 2024. This is the 323rd shooting. And, we understand that there's larger implications for why this happens. The absolute abundance of guns. No healthcare, but guns. Guns galore, guns everywhere, right? Add in disillusionment, anger, resentment, poor education. There's endless data out there, and I've been reading so much of it lately, right? Of the ways in which exposure to social media creates a kind of behavioral issues in young people, an inability to express themselves, an inability to comprehend and break down and articulate the content that they're consuming, a kind of despair. And we're talking single digits, right? And it goes up. I think the Washington Post also had an article out Monday. It was either the Washington Post or the New York Times that really outlines the uptick in violence in schools because of our cell phones, specifically the way that we information share, how they're used in the actual, do you know what I mean? To share how we share information, but also how they share information amongst themselves, let alone the implications of the internet, how we do everything for content now, how it's all a performance. And high school was already a horrible place for many, many youth. This sucks. It really sucks. And I am so tired of, it's not enough, right? That this is happening. This is the 323rd mass shooting, right? At an elementary or secondary school this year. That's not enough. The red-pilled fucking weenies on the right, every time now that there's a shooting that becomes, known, because obviously we don't know about all 323. I'm pretty fucking diligent about my research. And I can tell you that at most I have read about maybe around 150 this year. They don't really want to report on it that often because it's a bummer and it speaks to a larger issue that nobody's doing anything about. And a big part of it, of course, is we talk about all the, the AIPAC as a lobby group that has way too much influence over American Congress. Well, so does the NRA, and all its subsidiaries. And I'm just so disgusted. And as if that wasn't enough, these red-pilled right-wing loons have this weird, they do this now with any story that breaks through. They get in there and they say that the shooter was transgender. I don't know why or how this happened. It's like anything to blame it on trans folks all the time. But it's so gross. And it's like become a standard of the last 2 years, right? And it didn't matter that school friends, a boyfriend on Discord, like a lot of folks online were, communicating through things like Discord. They said explicitly she's not transgender. Even, I follow a lot of different accounts to make sure I'm getting information. Their particular effort to make this shooter transgender was so egregious that even well-known TERF accounts, right? So that's trans exclusionary radical femmes is the general, way that's understood. So they believe in feminism, but the whole trans thing has gone a little bit too far. And depending on what issue area we're talking about, they're right. But, trans people are being used as an absolute lightning rod for absolutely no reason. It's 100% transphobia. And it was so egregious around this that even a couple of well-known TERF accounts have had to say, this person is not trans. It's not a trans woman. Here's why. This is the entirety of their case to say that she was trans. So like lots of people, I know this is like, associated with trans folk. With Black people, we have like 100 different names. You have your name, and then there's a million different nicknames that come with it. And regular people do that all the time. So Natalie had a preferred name, which was Samantha. And because of this, these geniuses decided that she absolutely had to be transgender, especially because she was referred to as Sam for short. I just like, if that's all it takes, call me Jamal, honestly. Just do it. And this is especially wild because we all know that mass shootings in general and in schools are typically perpetrated by white men, young white men too. And sorry, but like, here's what's confusing to me. And I know it takes mental gymnastics to get to their conclusions. It takes mental gymnastics to understand the rationale, because low key, if you don't believe that trans people exist, as they say that we don't, well, it's kind of a self-own, but whatever. This year, according to the K-12 school shooting database, 9 shooting suspects were female compared to 249 who were male when the gender was identified, right? So, okay, great. We've said it's mostly males, but like the fact that this database exists at all, my God, what the fuck? You want to know something? I knew that we were on some other shit when not even wealthy people were willing to defend like their kids in schools. It was like, no, this is the norm and this is the standard. Anyway, I woke up innocently today to discover that Trump was talking about privatizing USPS. And I am so fucking sick of this fucking guy. And so I was like, because private equity is actually like one of the number one threats to all of us, right? And the private sector should never, ever be given control over any public assets. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. I promise I'm going to make it super interesting as much as I can. But I break down my arguments in in sort of 4 categories. But the number one thing, right, is just to remember that the most indicting case against privatization is our healthcare system. It's literally our healthcare system. But anyway, the private sector, here's my 4 general arguments. The private sector's goal, its ultimate goal, is to maximize profit, not deliver any kind of service. Right. So that's the one I'm going to explain. I'm going to use the healthcare system to, explain it the most. But number 2, it weakens public power and democracy. Right. Hello, the election. We've seen it. Number 3, it widens economic disparities and racial disparities. Right. We know that one of the virtues of public institutions, and they're all flawed. Right. But they can prioritize being accessible to citizens or just to anyone, regardless of age, race, gender, class, or ability. We know this. The core mission of these public, institutions is to serve the public. Private institutions are built to serve the interests of a very small group of shareholders and executives. So any question of equal access is just thrown out the fucking window. It doesn't matter anymore because it's about the singular pursuit of profit. I just read today, that the enrollment, Black kids getting into Harvard since the Supreme Court ended affirmative action is halved now. It's cut in half. Thanks. Yeah. Anyway, not that that's a public institution, but my point is that even our efforts to address these disparities are being cut down in this era that we're in. And the last one that's so crucial to this moment is that it weakens labor power. It weakens our labor movement, right? Private control of our public infrastructure has a massive impact on its workers, right? In efforts to contain costs and maximize profits, private entities always cut corners. They skimp on job quality. They cut down wages. They don't make safe working conditions or smart ones. And they definitely don't spend time training workers in any kind of way. There's a single-mindedness on profit. And the billionaire class of oligarchs that are now running our fucking government, or about to, right? I realized that even Ramaswamy is a billionaire. So you've got, the influence of Andreessen, you've got the influence of Thiel, you've got Musk, who's going to have the highest level of security clearance in the fucking country, right? So him, and then Trump himself too. We know that he's a billionaire. Zuckerberg on his knees, Bezos on his knees, Sun Sheng on his knees, right? And Ramaswamy, who I didn't realize was a billionaire because I've been looking at the hundreds and hundreds of billion-dollar billionaires. But yeah, he's a billionaire too. It's literally going to be run by that. They don't give a fuck about anything. They hate everything public because you cannot make money off of it. Any public good, they want to destroy it. They want to break it down. That's why USPS is on the chopping block. And yeah, I don't like flyers. None of us do. Snail mail is a thing of the past, but it's about what it represents. It's a public good. It offers a public service that matters. Do you remember in Parable of the Sower, Octavia Butler's book, right? When everything is 100% privatized, right down to the fire department. That's where we're headed under this government. Now, the goal, of course, is to ensure that they don't see their plan through. But this is where we're at. Like, we are in the age of privatization. And now, very, very, as succinctly as possible and as interestingly as possible, it's like, we'll get back to that initial point that I mentioned, which is the most indicting case against privatization is obviously our healthcare system in America. It's fucking awful because it is privatized. It's that simple. Okay, so just generally, and this is what Musk and Donald Trump and all these other folks. You've heard this word over and over again, and they talk about it with Doge, right? They're running this Department of Government Efficiency. Bullshit. They are preying on the fact that at different points in times, and we have all felt this, we've all experienced this, we've all heard this, that there's a very prevalent belief that government is inefficient. And in a lot of ways, right, they are. We know this. It isn't something that has to be that way. It's because of how many competing interests are in it. But it's not as inefficient as we have been led to believe. The people running it have been. I can't believe I sound like a fucking patriot right now. I hate the way that I've been I hate the fact that I've been put in this position and that we've been put in this position. But fuck it, I love PBS and NPR too much to have them take it away. All right. You're not going to take away my eclectic sounds in the morning. Don't you ever threaten to take away my Novena Carmel. I'll burn this whole thing. I'll declare martial law. I will. I'll do it. Anyway, this is the thing, right? Do you remember when Elon Musk took over Twitter? Do you remember what happened? How he gutted it? Remember? How he gutted it, and the only people who ended up staying were the ones who needed work visas. He fired everybody. And those people, for the record, are still fighting to get pay from the severance packages that they're owed. There's a few cases with that regarding Tesla, but that's neither here nor there. I'm bringing up Twitter in particular because we are not being well informed enough on how this whole thing works. So let me say this explicitly. the classic private equity buyout uses a small amount of cash, but a large amount of debt, right? So anytime the private sector takes over a public good, they do so with very little money and a large amount of debt. So there's an immediate and urgent need to cut costs. That is why we saw what happened with Twitter happen as it became the bastard X that it is now. So vital positions, infrastructure, options, those become exponentially more limited. Quality becomes inconsistent. It becomes rushed. Outcomes are worsened. And if we're going to healthcare, translation, increased patient complications. All of those things happen when private equity takes over public goods. So in healthcare, we see that the reality is profit margins over patient care. It's that simple. And, we've been sold this idea that, if government works together with the private sector, we can be better off. But data tells us otherwise. And you see it everywhere around the world. And that, again, healthcare is the best way to understand that the private sector faces much higher costs of capital, right? The infrastructure projects are always long-term investments, and the differences in the cost of capital matter a lot. That is, and again, we go back to that. We got to cut as much as possible. And it's people who are being cut, right? It's people. So to just circle back, I know government inefficiency, and it is a real thing. But again, think about the fact that people here can get unemployment. That's a public good. It might not be the fastest system. And yes, this is a fucking place that 100% makes poor folks, down on their luck folks, jump through hoops, an unbelievable amount of hoops to just get the bare minimum. But that is an issue of who is running it, not the it itself. That it's incredibly flawed, but we are far worse off without it. So it must be improved upon. But these billionaires are relying on our presumption of inefficiency to justify destroying it. And you know what? The private sector is far less efficient than we know. I have been spending so much time researching this. I had to pick up Pitker again, so I'm back on that. In addition to Nickel and Dimed, and then I'm also reading Rutger Brennan's Utopia for Realists, just in case you're like, what's going on? That's where we're currently at, right? So, like, economists refer to the private sector's inefficiency as agency problems, right? And that's where conflict of interest and misguided incentives lead to outcomes that are far from socially desirable. Case in point, the financial crisis, right? Yeah. When things don't work out, right, in the private sector, right? So when they're like, okay, well, buy up these hospitals, we know that that's partly why there's a housing crisis. Private equity just buys up just hundreds and thousands of unoccupied homes, holds on to them so they could drive up prices and interest rate and mortgage. They literally create the conditions. That's part of the inefficiency. And in the event that these things don't work out long term, it doesn't matter to them. They can just fuck off. They walk away free and clear and far richer than when they started. And where does that leave us? At the very least, when it comes to asymmetrical outcomes, we have an entity to hold accountable. That is our government. That is the people involved in it. And yes, it is an incredibly botched system, but one that needs to be improved upon. And again, we are so much worse off without it. This is why ultimately we need that economic populism platform. We have to move government to center infrastructure packages that align with public interest and public good. It's good for the budget. It's good for our economy. It's good for our society. It's good for people. Economic policy, populism platform, please. Okay. This was very much a rant. It took a lot to synthesize all the information in my brain into something, into something like hopefully clear in those like 4 points that I made out. But again, if you take away nothing else from this conversation, just know that that private equity is our big fight, right? Healthcare is how we're going to enter it, because it's the most damning case against private equity and privatization, which these billionaires are going to be spoon feeding to their toothless, yokel, red-pilled, loser, weenie fan base. Okay. Like they literally every day communicate on multiple levels. We hate you. We hate everything about you. You are a poor. And all these dudes are just like, more please, sir. It stresses me out. It stresses me out. It's a psyop. Okay, this is so random, but this is a psyop. This is probably because it's late. But I've been reading about this. I've been reading about this too, and it just made me laugh. Okay, there's all these articles out there now. Recently, I guess a few stories broke because archaeologists, anthropologists, etc. They came across this this very violent scene. Sorry, the laughter is not for that. That was but it's because I'm going somewhere with this, right? But it was like a very violent scene from like hundreds of thousands of years ago, and they think that it was like Neanderthals attacking other Neanderthals. And if you read, Sapiens or like the Dawn of Everything, well, more so Sapiens. But there was a point in time where there were like, a dozen or so like different kinds of humans just walking around. We are one kind, Neanderthals were another kind, whatever. And so lately, Neanderthals have been in the news cycle again, right? The nerdy parts, and it just reminded me of something like, okay, so do you remember because I'm like, this is what a PR campaign can do. Like this is a psyop. Okay, do you remember back in the 90s, right? I was on a famous TV show. That's for all the other depressives out there. No, back in the 90s, everybody talked about Neanderthals like they were idiots. Remember that? It was like, you're a Neanderthal. It was an insult. It was just commonly understood that Neanderthals were stupid and gross and hairy. And then do you remember when it kind of stopped? Like altogether, like it just stopped. Yeah, that was because scientists discovered that white folks, generally speaking, are the closest direct descendant to Neanderthals than anyone else. So basically, if you were one of the human species that originated from Africa, i.e., hello, okay, you don't have that. But generally speaking, white folks, more than generally speaking, are generally like 1 to 3% Neanderthal. Because there was a lot of stuff going on. Everybody was fucking everybody. Look, we're going to be horny. That's just a thing. At least we know that we're consistent. Horny, violent, inventive, I guess. But anyway, the whole thing changed once white folks found this out, and then they just ran this entire campaign that is just like, oh wait, no, because they were in commercials as like dumb and smelly and stupid. But then it all changed, and it was like, no, they were smarter than we thought, totally, and that's why that happened. Okay, there was absolutely no reason for me to bring that up, other than the fact that it just came like this is I'm ridiculous now. It's time to hit the VMs for the voicemail. I've clearly lost the plot, but it does make me laugh. Oh man, it's like, who cares? But it's like, hey, if you was holding on to that 2% Cherokee, we better hold on to all of it. Okay, sorry. Okay. Let's hit the VMs for that question of the day.
Hi, I've been seeing TikToks about this one mom who's been seemingly neglecting her kids. I don't know if you're familiar with Nurse Hannah, but she had 17 dirty diapers laying around her house and recently filmed her child at a grocery store, and he flinched and guarded his face when his father came near him. Because of all of this controversy, her posts have gotten a lot of attention and revenue. What's your opinion on family vloggers and people openly neglecting their children as rage bait?
This is a great question, and I'll just say, I'll be concise. I fucking hate it. I hate it. And even though I have a lot of empathy for the fact, right, that we're all being forced into a gig economy, you know what I mean? And there's been the collapse of sort of economic infrastructure, wage work, there's exponential wage theft. None of that justifies exploiting your children. I don't like it. I think it's, children are people. So that's number one. They're human beings, and they cannot provide a certain level of consent, or you turn them into workers. And it's challenging because it's like, oh, they like doing it sometimes. Oh, well, look at them. They like doing it, but it's work. And what they love, what they really like, is the affirmations that you give them. But when you lump that kind of responsibility to perform on a child, it has long-lasting detrimental effects and impacts. And then there's a need to generate more content, which means you have to generate more problems, more negligence. So that's those 17 diapers. We don't know. It's very possible that they were purposefully left out in a number of 17. I know parents. Hell, like every other fucking stud out there, I've been one myself. It's just like, oh, a single mother or a pregnant woman with a negligent man. Hello, over here. And you leave a diaper or two around, and then you run around and you grab it. To me, 17, I'm like, you took diapers out of the diaper genie for that. Like that's, so it's I think it's just, it is a sign of the times that we're in, but it's something that I don't think any children should really have to endure, unless it's something that they explicitly want to do. And if that's the case, then it should be on their own account with the correct, kind of care and supervision and protections. And even then, I actually feel some kind of way about it, to be honest with you. I got to sit more with this one. This was a really good question. This happens. I think about it like days later. Like I still remember Mia's question where they asked about, who is my favorite character aside from Natsu? And then like literally days later, I was like, wait, how did you know that my favorite character was Natsu? Like I love these questions. So we might come back to this one because, but it's just like, if the data tells us anything, it's that this shit is like the internet, social media, exposure too soon to anyone who is below single digits has absolute disastrous effect. Like millennials are, and probably some of Gen Z are, but certainly, like especially millennials, we're the last generation to develop normal brains. And for now. And that sucks. We alone hold the keys to truth. No, I'm joking. Okay. Anyway, that was a great question. And I want better for us. And I think it's all there. It's all right in front. We just have to go out and get after it, because we're not going out like this. I can tell you that. Anyway, why don't we hit that music? Because I've been yapping too much, and this is the longest episode I've done this week. Yikes. Anyway, I just want to say thank you so much for listening to JFK Today. It means the world to me. The show really is a labor of love. New episodes drop 4 times a week. We're available everywhere podcasts are. This is self-funded, so if you love the show, feel free to support it as you can. We're at patreon.com/JanayaFK. Don't forget, I want to hear from you. Drop your voice note questions to jfktodayshow@gmail.com. Shout out to the JFK team, Karen Carolyn, and shout out to you, the listeners that make it all possible. Love you!